Ladies and gentlemen, I have two news stories to bring you today, and let's talk about the first, and that is the EFF. So for some time, we have been spelling the potential demise of the EFF, and we've said that, the next person to go would be Ndlozi, the ice boy himself. Julius Malema's favorite little puppet. And I've done numerous videos on the individual and his potential departure from the EFF. Well, would you know it, he's now resigned from Parliament. Now, it's very interesting because we have to actually talk how we got here. And the last we knew, he was excluded from the conference that the EFF had, and he wasn't actually up for election. Now, following that event, many individuals have speculated on what may or may not have been going on. So you may recall that some time ago, Julius was asked whether or not Ndlozi would stay in the party. And Julius basically said, well, he's renewed his membership, so he's not going to go anywhere. And then they had their elective conference, and he wasn't at it. And many individuals asked Julius, where is he? And at that conference, Julius said, well, I'm not responsible for him. 90% of the people who are expected to be here are here. And if they're not here, then they weren't supported to be here. And that left many individuals asking why he was no longer being supported by Julius Malema. Well, the actual answer appears to be that basically, following the departure of Floyd Shivambu, Julius has been a little bit skeptical, a little bit skittish around all of his senior lieutenants, all of his big honchos in the party. Now, because of that, he's obviously been watching his back, and he's excluded Ndlozi because he's actually very well liked, and he could very well be the next leader of the party if somebody pushed him in that direction. So as a result, he was excluded so that he couldn't challenge Juju for the throne. And would you know it, in retaliation, well, he's resigned from Parliament. And that's all we know. So we don't actually know anything further than that. And I've tried to look, and I've asked sources. The answer is, no one knows. Now, some individuals speculate that Julius may be, allegedly, going through a very difficult situation in his personal private life, specifically his family. And some individuals have alleged that potentially Julius may be getting a divorce, and as a result, he may be taking some substances which may explain his rapid weight loss. Now, again, some individuals have suggested that potentially he may, allegedly, be going into forms of rehab, and whilst in that rehab, the position for party leadership could potentially go to Ndlozi if somebody pushed him that direction. And so in order to safeguard the future throne of the EFF, he's been excluded from all party activities. And I would like to re-highlight that this is all speculation and allegedly. I don't actually know this. It's only what some people are suggesting. Now, the whole point of me saying that is obviously I don't want to get into trouble for alleging something that might not be true. It may just purely be conjecture and rumor. But at this point in time, that's the furthest I'm getting to the truth because, unfortunately, no one's really talking about it. So will he actually make the departure to the MK party? Well, no one knows. In fact, even the MK party isn't really talking about it. So that appears to be it for now. He appears to have resigned from Parliament. He told all of the EFF individuals, sorry, I'm leaving. See you soon. And that was it. He resigned from Parliament, and he is now being replaced by the student command leader. And we all know how well the student command leaders in the EFF do. So let's get on to the main news story. And that is actually the story around a moron, also known as Aaron, who's the Minister of Health. Now, before I go any further, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. It really does help. Only 60% of the individuals watching this video are actually subscribed. That's 40% of the audience that isn't. And your like really can help. So if you really like the work I do and you want me to do more of it, well, like, share, and noticeably subscribe. And I know we all say that, and quite often people ignore it, so they go, oh, we're already subscribed. But if you haven't, please do. I'm asking you, as a favor, subscribe to the channel. So let's get on to it. So what's Aaron done now? Okay, well, it's actually really important to understand that Aaron is in charge of pushing the NHI, and pushing the NHI is what he's doing. And firstly, we have to look at a news article that came out on the 10th. And actually on this, in the 10th, this was actually around doctors in the Eastern Cape. And there were many of them who picketed the Premier of the time, basically saying, we need some jobs. And Aaron had some very, very interesting things to say. And noticeably, he said, okay, so you're a doctor and you want a job. There's shortages of doctors in 90% of the world. So why don't you go there and get a job? He said, I can't afford to hire you. So why don't you go to other countries? And this is the most bizarre, dumbass thing I have ever heard in my entire life. To train a doctor takes an incredibly long time and it's very costly for a country. When you get your doctors, you want to hold on to them. Every other nation on the planet holds on to them. And this dumbass is like, well, you guys, we can't afford you, so just go abroad and work for someone else. The problem is, Mr. Moron, that once these individuals leave, they don't come back. And that's skills, that's expertise, and ultimately a cost that the economy and the taxpayer have paid, and ultimately we're not even getting the bloody doctor because they're leaving the country. Because you told them to. Because you can't afford them. So what he actually says is that because we have austerity measures in the country and, crippling budgets, we don't have the capacity to hire doctors. He says because he didn't have the means to actually pay said individuals, he can't give them jobs. So despite there being a huge number of medical vacancies all over the country, with many areas of the country seriously suffering without a doctor, the Minister of Health isn't prepared to employ doctors. And his exact answer is, you're free to go elsewhere in the world. This is just so bizarre. Now, all of this has not escaped many individuals' attention. Because as you will all know, one of the issues with the NHI, and it's an issue that people have been speculating on for some time, is actually around the cost of NHI. Now, you see, if all 63 million individuals in South Africa actually paid for their health, which we all know is a lot of them want actually in employment, but if they all did, the actual payment per month for all the individuals to pay the 1.3 trillion needed to fund all medical services in the country for everybody would be 21,000 annually. And as we know, that's not going to happen. So how do you actually do that? Well, the first way to do it is potentially to hike taxes. And this is hiking taxes to basically an unsustainable rate and to kingdom come and back. And it basically wouldn't work because in order to hike those taxes to a reasonable perspective, the 21,000 that we need, well, that would mean that you would have an additional, say, $2,000 tax a month. Well, that means everybody has to be in employment. And we don't have that. So another way to do it would obviously be to grow the economy between 7.2% and 10.4% annually for the next 20 years. And I don't know about you, but when we have a growth rate of 0.6%, and that's not really looking like it's going anywhere because of ANC policy, I don't really see that as being potentially likely. The other ways that you could potentially fund it is a VAT increase, also a payroll tax. Well, it's just not going to happen. So how then do you fund it? And how do you fund it is an ongoing question that basically nobody can answer. We all keep speculating, we crunch the numbers, and we just can't make it work. Why? Because at the moment, we need to go through a degree of austerity in order to actually save some money so that we can get a cash surplus, and that ultimately allows our economy to grow. For those of you who dispute that, I would raise you a Milei and an Argentina, and all you got to do is just study what that guy's doing, because he's doing rather well. So one speculation that has been made is that the ANC apparently, allegedly, according to City Press, made the allegation that they would push the private sector to adopt almost cheaper medical schemes so that everybody could get on one who could afford it, and potentially enforcing a compulsory medical scheme through all employers. This would mean that basically everybody who was employed would basically be on a private medical scheme, which would free up large sums of money for the public hospitals so that they could modernize, fix things, employ doctors, all the usual things that they should be doing right now. But they don't, because they had people like Moron in charge of them. Now, this entire proposal was apparently placed in order to placate the DA members of the cabinet, because the DA and various other members of the cabinet aren't exactly pro-NHI. And if you actually look at it, the ANC only has 40.2% support. They actually need a majority support over 60% in order to actually implement certain things in the cabinet. And actually, the majority of the GNU parties don't actually support the NHI in its current format. It's just the ANC, it's an ANC proposal. And in typical fashion, the ANC still thinks that it won the election, even though they're actually in a minority GNU. And this ultimately means that they think that they can just throw their weights around. And that's exactly what Moron thinks he's doing. He says that he's fully in favor of the NHI and he's going to make it happen whether you want it or not. Now, you see, where he thinks that's all going to happen is actually the midterm budget. What he wants there to be is this huge, big commitment to spending for the NHI. It's all or nothing. You must do it, and we must phase out medical aids by 2029. That's the date that apparently they're giving to phase it out. Now, this proposal that's been said would obviously be a nice middle-of-the-road type proposal. It would mean that we could still have private medical institutions doing stuff, and it would give people more time to basically fix the states and reduce some of the pressure off the state by having this form of compulsory type medical aid. Or Moron says that no, that's all fabricated and that's not true, and he will push for NHI whether he wants it or not. It's all ridiculous and unfounded, and no, that's never going to happen. He said because these individuals, yet again, don't understand something. Number one, we don't have the money. Number two, we have to cut costs. Number three, the ANC didn't win the election. Number four, very few people that actually pay tax actually want this. The individuals that do want it are people that think that they can expropriate the private sector in order to get free medical health services without actually having to pay for it. The typical socialist type mentality. And these individuals ultimately are going to extract from the system, but not actually give anything to the system. So ultimately, where does this leave us? No one really knows. The ANC and the DA continue to have a big little Barney over it. And at the end of the day, it does look like, if we use the better bull as an example, that the ANC will ultimately get its own way. At least that's my feelings. Anyway, please do let me know what you think in the comment section below. Until tomorrow, bye.